Attorney Ted London.
Wait, go now. Go.
Good afternoon. You're on the legal line with Attorney Ted London, WVON 1690 AM. We have, of course, the legendary Cliff Kelley, who's hosting this show. We're on every Thursday, 3:30 to 4. So glad you're joining us today. We're going to go live on the radio in a couple of seconds. Whenever Cliff looks up, we're going to go live. Ready, Cliff? Good. Whenever Joseph comes in.
Good afternoon. This is the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. It is Thursday, April 12th. We are on iHeartRadio. All you need to do is download the app to your smartphone or tablet and take us with you wherever. You can also go to WVON.com, and when you do that, we always ask that you participate in the daily listener poll and view our current video. You can always call us direct, 773-591-1690, and of course you can get social, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. As you know, this is The Legal Line with attorney Theodore London, attorney and counselor at law, and of course he's our neighbor. His office is right across Stony Island at 1718 East 87th Street. Telephone number 773-721-3333. Some of the best legal service you can get in the universe, and we're always pleased to have him here. How are you, Counselor?
Cliff, if it's a Thursday and I'm with you, it could be nothing other than a great day.
Thank you so much.
As always, it is such a pleasure and a privilege to be with Mr. Cliff Kelley on Thursdays. Thank you for having me again, sir.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure because you give out such great information.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we go further, I want you to mention someone, your social media
coordinator. You know what? We're starting a new segment this week, and it's going to be a weekly segment. We're going to have Sashay Walker. We're going to call her Sashay. She is, in fact, our social media coordinator, and she's going to give you some information before we get into the show about our social media platforms and about upcoming events. Ms. Sashay,
Thank you so much, Attorney London. We are on Facebook Live right now, so you can stream the radio show. We're on every Thursday, and we do post the show to our YouTube channel, the Law Offices of Theodore London, on YouTube every Friday. So you can catch us on YouTube and on Facebook. Our website as well, tedlondon.net, always has great information. You can actually ask us questions on the website, and it'll come directly to the office. So you can find us on there as well. We're also on LinkedIn. So if you are looking to connect with Attorney London on LinkedIn, we are on LinkedIn as the Law Offices of Theodore London. Attorney London also has a speaking engagement coming up Thursday, April 26th. There is an estate planning matters seminar hosted by Chicago Title Land Trust Company at BJ's Market, also hosted by Attorney London. Please call our office to RSVP 773-721-3333.
And Cliff, that's the event that we give quarterly with Chicago Title Land Trust. Again, I think the capacity is only 75. These things will always fill up. So if you want to come, invite a friend, family member, please call our office. Number is 773-721-3333. Shay, are we going to have any giveaways there?
Absolutely, we will. So please invite your friends and family to come with you. You'll walk away with something great.
And additionally, you'll walk away with a coupon for a discount on your estate planning services. So please, it's a great opportunity. If you've been thinking about estate planning, it's a great opportunity to come get information, and you get to meet Sashay, maybe get an autograph from Sashay. Cliff, hopefully you'll come because normally you do stop in. We always appreciate and love seeing you. So do the people who attend, and just great information as well.
Wait, give the date and time again.
Shay.
April 26th, that's a Thursday, from 6 to 7:30 at BJ's Market off 87th and Stony.
That's great. That is going to be great. Yeah, I will definitely be there.
Yes, indeed. Thanks so much. So come meet Cliff, come meet Shay. Ted London will happen to be there. I think coming up, Cliff, I'm not sure if it's next week or the following week, but David Lanciani, Executive Vice President of Chicago Title Land Trust, is going to join us here in the studio. So David's going to be joining us. It's good, always good to see David.
Right,
indeed.
All right.
So,
yes.
Tales from the Office. I know that's one of your famous segments, Cliff, as it is for many of the listeners. Tales from the Law Offices of Theodore London. That's a segment in the show, Cliff, where we talk about the sort of matters that we handled in the previous week. very, very busy week for us. Of course, doing a lot of estate planning. This has been a week, Cliff, where we've had so many retired educators come in to get their estate planning done. One thing that we know is this retired educators get their estate planning done more than any other profession. Don't know why, haven't quite figured it out yet, but retired teachers, principals, administrators, they're adamant about getting their estate planning done. So this is a case in point. We had a couple who came in this week, married for 46 years. The wife's a retired educator, I think 30 plus years. Her husband is a retired police officer. Very, very common. Many retired educators are married to retired police officers. There was absolutely categorically something going on between CPS and CPD some 40 plus years ago. They were hooking up, getting married, having children, raising children, and coming into the solid middle class of mainstream American people. So very proud of them. In this case, we did a land trust for their real estate. We did, of course, power of attorneys for them, and we did a living trust for them as well. One of the benefits of the living trust is they wanted to make sure that if either of them ever went into a healthcare facility, that they would not have to do what's called a Medicaid spend down. And so, of course, middle class people, both of them worked for decades, accumulated quite a bit of money. They want to protect it from a potential Medicaid spend down, so they got the full package in terms of estate planning. Cliff, we had another couple that came in this week. Another retired educator. She taught 1 year in Mississippi. She taught 4 years in the Waukegan area and 30 plus years City of Chicago public schools. She and her husband were married over 40 years. They had multiple properties, but both properties in a land trust. Of course, we did the POAs. And with this family, the husband had been married previously, had had children from a previous marriage, and they wanted to make sure that the family home and the home that the wife owned before she got married went to the biological son and respectfully did not go to his 2 children from the previous marriage. And so they put the properties in a land trust. Their joint biological son will get the homes, and he's the secondary decision maker for both of them. And then they left his biological children from the first marriage a substantial amount of cash from an assortment of bank accounts. So again, another retired educator. Her husband was, again, a retired City of Chicago employee. Okay. So third Tales from Law Office scenario, they've had another third retired educator, this time a gentleman, 85 years old, worked 40 plus years in the Chicago public school system, started as a educator in high school, then moved down to middle school, worked as an educator for 40 plus years. This is the gentleman that we had completed his estate plan a number of years ago. He came in, Cliff, to amend his estate plan, so he took 2 children off of his land trust and added 2 different ones. So he removed 2 and added 2 different ones. That's his choice. He didn't go into too much detail why, but it's his property, he gets to decide. We also updated his powers of attorneys, and he updated his beneficiaries on 4 life insurance policies. So wow. I don't know if someone angered him or if I don't know if someone made him happy. But in any event, he did update his documents. We suggest that, if you've had estate planning, if it's been 5 or 7 years since you've updated it or reviewed it, it's probably a good time to come in and review, update it if necessary.
That second issue that you mentioned, Counselor, think of what would happen with the children before that marriage and so forth if you had a will. Oh my goodness, there'd be so much
chaos.
Real chaos.
And even
lots of money to be spent.
Not even just a will, but if there was no estate planning at all.
At all, right.
Because we know that really only about 1/3 of all educated, home-owning, retired African-American people have any sort of estate planning. Yeah. And of those, probably about 90% of them have wills, because they think that if they have wills are going to keep their assets out of probate court, which by now many of those who listen regularly to Cliff Kelley, who happen to hear Ted London on the Legal Line, know that if you have a will, your loved ones are going to have to go through the expensive, time-consuming probate process.
But then again, Counselor, as you mentioned, what happens if you have nothing?
Well, here's what happens if you have nothing, and I hate to put it this way, but oftentimes, if a middle-class family has no estate planning, what it amounts to be is a how should I characterize this as a lawyer's lotto. That's what happens because going through the probate process is expensive and it's time consuming, often stressful, and attorneys make a good living when the clients don't have estate planning and they have to go through the probate process. So if there's no estate planning, really it amounts to a lawyer's lotto payday because
no will, no nothing. You just
you have to go through the probate process, and you are subject to the fees of a lawyer and the court system. So we want to avoid that.
Yeah. Okay. I just want people to understand that. I don't want them to think that if you don't have it, well, not a problem. There's a big problem.
There's a huge problem.
Huge problem. Very good. So, I think, go ahead.
So again, Cliff, we can get into the subject for the day. The subject for the day is the talk. The talk. We want to encourage people to have the talk with their loved ones, primarily the senior people in their family, parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, sometimes even siblings. We have so many siblings who bring their brothers and sisters into our office to get estate planning. There are some really terrific siblings in our communities, Cliff, who care for their brothers and sisters oftentimes because their kids may live out of state, perhaps they had no children, perhaps their spouse has passed away. Brothers and sisters in our community really step up as caregivers. But we want to make it easy for them. So again, we're going to start encouraging the people in our community, children, to have the talk with their parents. Now we have to consider something. We know that having the talk sometimes can be difficult because if you have the talk, it sort of anticipates someone will become ill or they will pass away. And no one necessarily wants to face that. And so it's difficult sometimes, Cliff. But we know that parents had the talk with their children when they were young. And we know that that talk was sometimes difficult for the children to hear, sometimes difficult for the parents to discuss. We know sometimes it was embarrassing and sometimes it's sensitive. But now it's time for the children to have the talk with their parents, their grandparents, their aunts and uncles to make sure that they have proper estate planning.
That's important. Now, how do we go about, of course we have people listening, thank goodness, and they can call your office, but we need to make sure that people understand because in many instances the offspring, the children, counselor, think that the parent is supposed to do that. And that's not necessarily the case. It needs to be needs to be discussed, notwithstanding who initiates
That's
it.
true.
Right?
And that's why we're going to try to start encouraging the listeners to have the talk with their family members, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, etc. We have to have the talk because here's one of the things I've discovered, and the research suggests as well. Many senior people in the African American community have done very, very well for themselves. Many of them, like many of the educators who come into our office to do estate planning, have worked for 30 plus years. Many of them have pensions. Many of them have homes that are paid for. Many people in the African American community own multiple homes. Many of them own multiple unit properties. Many of them have quite a bit of money in the bank. There was a book some years ago, and I read it many, many years ago, and I think it was called The Millionaire Next Door. But there are many, many millionaires, people who are on the cusp of being millionaires, who are retired, who have no estate planning. And so it's essential for our community to make sure that they have estate planning, because particularly those 70 plus, 75, 80, really many of them have accumulated quite a bit of wealth, and we want to make sure that their loved ones don't have to go through, again, the expensive, time-consuming, stressful probate process. The way that you avoid that is with really simple estate planning.
That's great. As always, we are so pleased to have in studio Attorney Theodore Ted London, with offices at 1718 East 87th Street. Phone number 773-721-3333. And of course, if you have a question you'd like to ask right now, you can do so simply by calling 773-591-1690. He's always willing to answer. I don't think you've ever missed a caller.
You know what, Cliff?
We disagreed on one.
Well, I think there was over all the years I've been on with you, there's been 2 calls that I didn't have the answer to, and I went back to my office and researched them, and I gave the answer the following week.
So I remember that.
Normally I'm very good at answering questions and having information, but if I don't have it, I'll let you know that I don't have the answer, and I will get back with the answer next week.
Right.
Because one of the things I've discovered, Cliff, is that if one caller calls in with a question, many of the listeners have the same question.
Exactly.
And so they're benefiting from the answer
Right.
when someone calls and asks the question.
I do remember that you did research. No, the other thing I was laughing about was the divorce you wouldn't.
Divorce I would not do after a couple been married for 65 years. So we're not going to facilitate the divorce of people who've been married for 65 years or longer.
Oh, that was something you said. No, I'm not doing it. One of the things I want to make sure people also know, of course, what we talk about all the time, is what you do such a great job with. But the law firm, the law offices, I should say, of Theodore London, you do it all.
We do it all. We are a full-service law firm.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but if I may continue a little bit more about the talk issue,
sure.
and we're going to have this more and more in the coming weeks, but I want to make sure that the listeners know how to facilitate the talk with their loved ones.
Okay.
First of all, you have to make sure that your family member is comfortable discussing really sensitive issues with you. All the time, it's not a matter that the family member doesn't want to discuss the issue. They may not want to discuss it with you. So you may want to have someone else broach the subject with your loved one, or potentially even an attorney. You need to let the loved one know that you're really looking out for their best interests. And the reality is you have to really be looking out for their best interests, not your own. Because seniors can detect when someone is trying to take advantage of them. They're wise, notwithstanding their years. Many of them can see right through you when you're trying to get information and take advantage of them.
Good point, yeah.
Another thing, Cliff, is for the seniors and for those of you who are going to facilitate the talk with your loved ones, one of the most important things you have to know or recognize is you have to know where the important documents are. This is a really, really important thing. I get so many calls into my office, and people say, Attorney London, I can't find the documents. I don't know where the deed is. I don't know where the life insurance policies is. I don't know where the accounts are. We know that about $8 billion goes collected every year in life insurance benefits and other financial accounts solely because the loved ones didn't know where the accounts and things are. So those are the three important things that you want to do when you start facilitating the talk. Make sure the person's comfortable with you. Really make sure it's their interests that you're trying to protect. And again, the bottom line is you want to know where those important documents are.
That's an excellent comment, of course, because you go through this all the time. What do you do if someone knows, Consular, that there are certain documents, but they don't know where they are? Is there a way that you can assist in?
Well, oftentimes, if the person is still competent, oftentimes we can create new documents.
Okay.
But because it's a very troubling thing, and this is very common, Cliff, that someone suspects that there's a will after someone passes away, but they can't find it. And so if you cannot find a will, then it's as if the person has passed away without a will. Of course, we want to avoid wills in the first place.
Sure.
One other quick point, if I can, Cliff, about the sort of questions or the information that you want to ask when you are facilitating the talk. Really, there's only three. You want to ask the person who's going to get your home. That's what you want to know. We know that the average home owned by the African American family is valued at $125,000. We know that 1/4 of all homes owned by African American people have no mortgage on them at all. That's a lot of money that can be tied up in probate without some simple estate plan. So you want to know, ask the loved one, who's going to get the home after you? All the kids, or sometimes I'm fond of saying, just the good one. It's up to them to determine that, and they can make that determination if they do it before they respectfully pass away. You want to know who's going to make decisions for you if you ever find yourself in a position where you need someone to make decisions for you. Well, we also know that about half of all people over the age of 65 years old or older at some point will need someone to make decisions for them. Everyone needs powers of attorneys, please, people. One for healthcare, one for business matters. And thirdly, we want to know who's going to get the money. These are the three simple things that you want to know when you're facilitating the talk with your parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, sometimes your siblings. You need to know who's going to get the home, who's going to make the decision for you, who's going to get the money. And again, once you get that information, then you need to contact an attorney and help them facilitate, put this in a way that's going to be understandable for your loved one. It's going to make sure it facilitates the passing of those assets to your loved ones without having to go through the expensive, again, time-consuming, stressful probate process.
Okay. That's wonderful information. I'm glad you're doing the talk.
The talk. So you have to have the talk with your loved ones. Your loved ones, mom and dad, had the talk with you when you were kids. Some of it we heeded it. Some of us didn't heed it as much, but it will be the same with your parents. Some of them will heed the information. Some of them will reject it. But you have to try to at least facilitate the talk, because if you don't, respectfully, when they do go to heaven, you're going to be stuck with a lot of expenses, stress, and oftentimes fighting with the other siblings.
You know, that's such a great thing to because you can avoid all of that. I've seen so many
easily
problems.
avoidable.
Oh, yeah.
So easily avoidable.
Yeah.
And again, whether you use Attorney Ted London's office or your own personal attorney, it's important that, again, you get some good, competent estate planning. There are many, many African-American lawyers in our community who do estate planning. So even if you don't use Ted London, please find an attorney that will help you put together a really affordable, straightforward estate plan.
I know a great attorney. You know, you can go to Attorney Ted London.
We always appreciate it, but there are others maybe that you're already using, and just please, it's important to get the information documented while a person's so healthy and competent.
That's great. That is wonderful. Well, we're almost out of time. Give us the high points again.
The high points are...
This is really something to talk.
The talk. Yeah. We have to have the talk with our senior loved ones. Again, sometimes, it's sensitive. Sometimes slightly it's embarrassing. Sometimes, again, it's just nothing we want to face because, again, sometimes it seems like it will anticipate illness or death, but it's important to have the talk. Please do.
Let me see if we can get in this very quickly. Denise is calling from the south side. Denise, we only have a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quick question. I was watching a documentary on James Brown on Sunday, and he had a trust, and his last wife and child were not in it, and somehow they were able to go in and get that trust dissolved or reopened. You know, what kind of situations can occur when something like that can happen?
That's a great question, Denise. I don't know how a trust can be breached. You know what? I'll tell you one thing. It was a very expensive process for them, for sure. You know, I'll have an answer. I can answer this question, Denise. I'll have an answer for you next week,
right.
and I'll look up the James Brown case specifically.
Okay, very good.
So tune in next week, Denise.
Again, 1718 East 87th Street. The telephone number is 773-721-3333. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cliff.
Always a pleasure.
I'll have the answer to Denise's question next week.
I know
Please
you will.
tune in, listeners.
All right. Let's go get the latest in the traffic, the weather with Robin Lewis, and then the top of the hour news.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Legal Line with Mr. Cliff Kelley. Sashay is our new social media coordinator. Not our new, but she is our social media coordinator. If you have questions, feel free to contact Sashay. 773-721-33 is our phone number, or you can always reach her at our website, tedlondon.net. And Shay, any other platforms they can reach us on?
You can reach us on YouTube. The show will be posted Friday morning. Every Friday morning, the show will be reposted on our YouTube channel. And you can find us at tedlondon.net or on LinkedIn at the Law Offices of Theodore London. Thank you for watching.
The Mexican Godfather.